Well, it's once again closing time in the bookshop here in Edinburgh, and today I just want to firstly draw your attention to a review of mine that's just been published in the Glasgow Review of Books. It's of a book I've mentioned on the channel before, Chimera by Thompson, who's an Edinburgh-based author. I love this book. It was a kind of creepy sci-fi novel about artificial intelligence, and lots more as well, but AI was a major theme, and it's relevant to today's video. I'm not going to be talking about the novel on this video. I will just wanted to mention the review, and I'll put a link to it in the episode description box below. No, what I wanted to talk about instead was Sylvia Plath. It is connected. Thompson quotes a poem of Plath's in the novel on the plethora of dryads. Dryads in Thompson's universe is the name given to artificially intelligent biosynthetic humanoids who are the assistants, the rather unsettling assistants to the human crew of the titular spaceship, the Chimera. These dryads are artificially intelligent in the modern sense. Their intelligence is a sort of composite intelligence. They possess masses of data mined from human input, and they synthesize that as best they can. They're not artificially intelligent in the old-fashioned sense of something like Data from Star Trek with his positronic brain, first coined by Isaac Asimov. How this positronic brain works is murky. It might as well function as magic, a super brain, a turbo brain, whatever you like. It's quite different, in other words, to this sort of aggregate artificial intelligence possessed by Thompson's dryads, which is kind of an evolution from things like ChatGPT. It's a more up-to-date artificial intelligence. So Plath's poem about dryads has a clear textual connection to Thompson's novel, featuring her version of dryads. But I was also reminded of different Plath poems, namely her bee sequence. Poems like The Swarm, which I've talked about on the podcast, in which a swarm of bees is imagined as a black, intractable mind, a mob that has become a single entity. Or take a poem like Stings, where Plath is looking at the cells of a beehive. Brood cells grey as the fossils of shells terrify me, they seem so old. Again, this aggregate AI intelligence that kind of works parallel to human input, machine learning, the ChatGPT model. By learning from us, by borrowing from us, its cultural memory becomes immediately as long as ours is. Technologically, it's still a child, it's in its infancy, and yet it's terrifyingly experienced. And the antiquity of the entity is stressed in another bee poem where Plath calls the swarm a Roman mob. In the poem Stings, which I've also done a podcast on, Plath says of the hive, "Here is my honey machine. It will work without thinking." I mentioned on my podcast that critics have suggested that Plath isn't just talking about the biographical hive that she really looked after in Devon, that it will continue to work without her helping it, that it will become this little self-sufficient society of bees, but also that she's talking about her work. Making the classical connection between poets and honey. She's talking about her poetry, the work that she's pouring her life into. It will go out into the world the way people talk about their art. It will live on beyond the writer. People often talk of books as if they don't just contain a record of intelligence, but that they have a level of consciousness too. Books are called moral or immoral. They are burned as if they themselves have sinned. And when I was reading Chimera, it was actually this couple of lines from Stings that I was most reminded of, despite the fact that they're not quoted in the novel. And that's because when the narrator of Chimera, Artemis, comes across a Sylvia Plath poem, the complexity of it and the oddness of it makes her assume that it was written by AI. And I thought that was just wonderful for two reasons. First of all, it showed that this was a humanity in Alice Thompson's world that has really begun to doubt itself. It's kind of lost its cultural memory. It is increasingly threatened by its biosynthetic, artificially intelligent servants. It envies them in all the usual ways: their immortality, their strength, their computing speed. But it's also beginning to envy their sensitivity, their artistic proclivities. And then the second reason I loved that moment was that it brought all of those artificially intelligent themes in Plath's bee poems full circle. When Artemis wonders whether or not this poem was written by an android, it's almost as if, as she predicted, Plath's honey machine has indeed gone on working without her. And here we see evidence of it in this futuristic setting out in the middle of deep space.